Oh, welcome to the Lost Rewatch. I forgot I clicked on. I don't know how I forgot. I clicked on live and was just waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for. But anyway, we have Karen and Natasha here. Eric's going to be a little late, but we had, I'll tell you, this one episode, I almost thought about just doing it by itself. I almost thought about it, but I said, we're getting to the end. Let's just keep up the 2-episode.
This would have I would have agreed with you. This would have been one to really really pick it and delve into it, because it was such a, not just a beautiful episode, but a very, very important one to the whole of where our castaways are and what they've, why they're there, what's happening, and
right.
It's really depicted quite beautifully through Richard's story.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite of all time. And I love it. And it's funny, I haven't seen it in probably 5 or 6 years.
Oh wow.
So it was like, okay, because I did one rewatch before, and then the other rewatch we kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And I just never got back to these episodes. And I was like, God, I forgot how good this episode was. I mean, I remembered it. I was looking forward to it once we got to into season 5. I said, oh, that's right. We got Aeterno coming up here.
Yeah.
And it's
just not only the Richard angle of this, but we get a lot of a little bit more insight to the
Man in Black
and Jacob's kind of two halves of a whole type of thing happening, right. And what they're really doing to and for each other. It's really, it gets juicy in that part.
Yeah. Yes.
I just, like I said, it just, I could have done like a spin-off of Richard's story when he was with Isabella back. I could have done a season with that.
Exactly. It was so beautiful. So beautiful. Just, I was, when this episode aired originally and then it was over, I remember being I was in tears, of course, but it was because of, I think, just the beauty of the love story part of Ricardo's and his love Isabella. But to see that Nestor got such a great opportunity to really give such a stellar performance, such a deep and heartfelt performance. And we got to see so much more, depth to him, but got to see him speak in another language and play through the ages. It was just so beautiful to see him. That I feel really lucky that we got to get so much of him in one episode. As far as an actor's perspective, to say, wow, he really gave a lot to us in that 52 minutes or whatever. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and I remember when this episode first came out, it was probably one of the most hyped up ones, because we, as Lost fans, we've been waiting for Richard's backstory since we first met Richard Alpert. And, because there was so much mythology behind him. No one knew what his deal was.
We just knew he was there for a long time.
He wasn't his age. He's been there in the 60s, and, he still looks the same. So getting to his episode for me it was so cool. And then when we finally got it, remember how there would be all those people like, oh, Lost doesn't answer any questions, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This episode gave us it was almost too much. I was like, you didn't even need to give us that much. We didn't need to know all that.
I think I actually wrote in my original blog post something that this episode actually gave us so much stuff. It was a beautiful package all wrapped up in a little bow. It was all there. So much of it was like, if you don't understand where we're at with this story at this point, you're never going to understand where we are, because it was all right there. Whether you're looking at the literal aspects of how the story gets depicted to us, or the metaphor part of it, it was all right there, and it done just absolutely beautifully.
It also set up Across the Sea.
Yes.
Because everyone always says that, and I was tending to agree with people that Across the Sea was. There's Eric. Hey, Eric.
Oh,
you're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Hi, friends.
There you are.
So sorry for the delay. I know I'm late.
No problem.
We're going to get 2 demerits now.
Oh, no. What are we talking about?
Actually, Jack, I agree with you when you say that kind of across the sea, and this one can kind of, go hand in hand. I agree with that. That's why I was like, oh, I'd love to be involved in these episodes because they do go hand in hand. It's because we get the total insight to the dichotomy of Man in Black and Jacob and what their roles are and how and why they play on this game thing and how they act and react to each other and really being two halves of a whole. And it comes from both of those episodes.
Yep.
Yeah, basically we haven't really dissected the episode yet. We're just talking about its importance and how it was,
It's so important
And beautiful.
For being such an essential story for them to tell, I think they still made a way to make it beautiful and flourish. And it never felt like an info dump. It was more because they focused on the characters, which is what Lost always does best.
and it's like I said, and like Karen said, Nestor did such a fantastic job
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
acting.
I mean, and
Yeah.
even getting introduced to Isabella, we only had her for a few minutes in the whole entire episode, and you literally fell in love with her. You fell for her. So to have an actor give you even that much in just that few minutes, that we cared about this actress for a little bit here, and she became a very, very important part of the story, and it was just so beautifully done.
I agree. Having the motivations of the Men in Black and Jacob be like crystal clear from across the sea in this is so valuable to the viewer. Like you get it, and the Men in Black is just gonna I worried when I first saw Aeterno. This probably may be my third time viewing it since it aired, but my first time seeing it, I was like, why isn't the Man in Black just straight with Richard? Why isn't he just okay, here you go? He prefers the sort of trickery and showing Isabella get pulled up and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I think it's a little bit clearer, that we know his motivation and we know that there are rules, I guess. And because it's almost like how trapped the Men in Black feels, the more extravagant, the more bold, the more big the show has to be because he's angry, he's raging even then. And what it teaches Jacob, that he's actually sent a guy to kill him, shows Jacob that his brother's dangerous.
Right.
I think for the first time he really believes it. I think for the first time he really sees, this guy could do a lot of damage.
Yes, he does say, you sent him to kill me?
Yeah, he was a little shocked by that.
Yeah, I want to go. I want to get off the island. Just let me go.
I'm ready to go. I want to leave.
My thing though and I remember we talked about this on one of the other podcasts, but in terms of the Man in Black, because you guys feel like he's a sympathetic character, that he's like the good guy or whatever. But
no, I don't think he's a good guy
compared to Jacob.
Yeah, I think he's better than Jacob.
Right. But I'm just saying, it's so part of this episode was they were talking about how, the Man in Black can't leave the island, right? And so I believe, and if he was to leave the island, then essentially, the world will be shrouded in evil or whatever the cork means. But yeah, so part of that was okay, I think I'm Team Jacob. I don't want him to leave the island because I don't want whatever evil is gonna be unleashed on the world to come out. But here you have the Man in Black saying ignore Jacob. I just want off the island. So
when we go across the sea, that's all he wants is off the island.
I know, but it's if his purpose on the island is to keep balance and peace across the rest of the world, I think you got to take that L. You just got to.
Again, though, if Jacob doesn't want Man in Black to get off the island because it's going to be terrible for the rest of the world, then don't bring anybody to the island.
Right, because that's his only means is if he finds somebody to then. But the island's real cool and makes a good TV show.
Yeah.
But this is part of the game that those two are playing with each other.
Yeah.
It's not this. It's not an all noble act of I'm bringing people here to have them find some sort of redemption. It's literally part of a game that they got going on. So it's not all an innocent little thing happening. So they're both parties really are, they play a game, they con each other, they manipulate each other. It isn't one-sided, where Man in Black is just doing all the dirty and manipulating. Nah, Jacob does it too. It's all part of the little game.
Because Jacob tells Richard, I'm looking for my notes, but he talked about bringing all these people to the island. And Richard goes, "What happened to them?" "Oh, they died."
Yeah, they died nonchalant.
Yeah.
They
So
all died.
that doesn't sound like a good guy to me.
But
he's not a
this episode starts off so brilliantly as well. Right from the get-go, right from the start, that's what I'm saying. This episode, there's just so much to talk about as it evolves throughout the entire episode. So this one's a little hard to jump around in my head.
Well, you have Richard. So Lana says Richard. She's here to. Jacob said, "Ask Ricardo would know what to do." Ricardo's.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, "Who's Ricardo's?" And he goes, "I'll do what to do," and he goes off and
Right.
says, "We're in hell, and I'm leaving."
Right, but he also says that he wants them all to know that he tells Jack, "You're dead. We're all dead. You're all dead, and this is not an island. It's not what you think it is." So I found that to be a very important statement. Because I've said all along, what the island is not really what we think it is.
It certainly plays into people thinking the Flash Sideways is hell too, or that people who thought it's been purgatory all along. It definitely they're leaning a lot more into the whole we're in hell thing as the show catapults towards a religious finale.
But the hell, and especially in this episode, we learned that the word hell for Richard specifically, because we find out in his flashback, he is a religious person. He is a man of faith. So his perception of his suffering is hell. This is hell. So it's a self-imposed hell for him. So metaphorically, for him, it is hell.
I could see
but
that.
it's really not hell. So, and that's what evolves. That's what evolves throughout the episode, is why Richard is in this self-imposed hell.
Yeah, I actually felt really sorry for Richard as well with this episode.
Yeah. Because he's just trying to save his wife. I mean, he's just, this all happened because he wanted to save his wife.
This episode is all about mortality, and it's Richard's sort of fearing what comes beyond that asks him, well, then I never want to die. And he and Jacob figure it out. He's afraid of what would happen, and he's seen so much suffering. Like opening the episode where Isabella is dying, he has to go save her, but in order to do that, he inadvertently kills the doctor. Life is short. Then he gets put on a boat, and most of those people die. He's the only survivor of all those people, including Magnus Hanzo, R.I.P.
Yeah.
But everybody dies, and
it's funny that this episode has a couple of nods to other characters and things that they get mirrored in that way. Where just for example, Ricardo tells Isabella, like matter of factly, before he leaves to go see the doctor, I will save you. Like, and Jack tells
Jack
the woman he marries. Jack says to her, I'm gonna fix you. So it's like matter of factly, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna fix you.
One was right, one was wrong.
Right. Well, and Ricardo's also, his boat trip to the island was an extremely rough storm thing that brought him to the island, which is what happened to Desmond. Desmond got brought to the island originally on a boat, but it went through a huge storm and everything. So, we get these little dribbles back to other characters, and really they're kind of the same. We all have these similar experiences. So it was pretty cool. But Richard is very, very much a product, or becomes a product of how debilitating grief can be. And grief, this is a wonderful, this episode can get me choked up, just throwing it out there and warning you. grief can be very, very debilitating. You have such love for someone, and you can't imagine your life without them, and what have you. But now all of a sudden you don't have them, and you're lost, and you're broken, and all of a sudden other things creep in, fear and other things like that. So his grief and his guilt over the accident that happened with the doctor put him in a place that he caused his own suffering for all of that time. He wouldn't let it go. So he caused his own suffering all of that time.
Do you think part of the guilt, though, too, is his wife died alone?
Yes, I think it's coupled that he left her because he had to make
He had to leave her.
Right,
Yeah.
he had to. But also that in his franticness to save her, he inadvertently kills the doctor.
But the
So there's
doctor,
now guilt, and but the doctor was a pain in the ass.
I was going to be honest. I would be less guilty about killing the doctor than leaving my wife to die.
Right.
Maybe,
Right.
Obviously, he had to do it,
Right.
but she died alone, and
Yeah.
that has to be. He obviously was madly
It's
in love
guilt.
with her,
Right.
and so I would think he's more guilty about that
Yeah.
than. Because then he goes to the priest, and the priest is can't be trusted either.
Right.
He's playing his own game. He's his own Jacob Man in Black
Yes.
game. And the priest says, "No, you're going to hell." So that's why he doesn't want to die. He wants
Right.
to live forever, so he doesn't go to hell
So he's going to hell.
because it terrifies him.
Right. And all of that is based in his religious belief that he has. So that's where all of that comes from. But poor Richard is put himself in this place because of those other emotional feelings of grief and guilt and things. So again, those things caused his suffering, and he just held on to all of that. It's like self-punishment, for a very long time, unnecessarily. He wouldn't let it go, and it's sad, heartbreaking. That those two predominant emotions really broke him and made him become a lost soul.
But again, going to where people say Jacob's a good guy, bad guy, he had to work for Jacob all these years,
Right.
doing whatever Jacob wanted.
Well, it's funny because here's Jacob kind of. This is why I don't give Jacob 100% this wonderful being, because he's a con man in a way too. You know how a con man has to make it seem like it's your idea to do something, to get you to do something. Jacob does that when he's talking to Richard on down by the beach to convince him he really is alive. He's not dead. He's not in hell. He's alive.
After he beat him up and
tried to
waterboarded him.
Yeah. He basically is like, he wants to know what Richard wants. And he's like, can you forget, can you give me absolution? And can you, can I have forgiveness? And like, I can't do any of those things. And then he does say, I want to live forever. But it's like, and then Jacob's like, ding, you want a job? You need somebody to step in, because I'm not going to tell people what to do. I can't step in and make people make the right choices. I need somebody else to do it. So I'll give you a job, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold. So he's like, they're all game playing. It's like crazy.
Yeah. Well, Richard didn't ask what it paid either.
No.
He did not negotiate. People who are looking for a job, you negotiate your salary, have the conversation.
Yeah.
Might be a little tough, but he's.
Property. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What's your health care benefits? And
You can't put a price on youth. He doesn't need health insurance because he's eternally youthful.
He's gonna live
that's true. That's a good
He's a man who's going to live forever. He doesn't age, but yet we see him wearing glasses at some point. It's like, well, shouldn't your eyes be perfect? On an island where it heals everything, your eyes should be pretty good.
Maybe it's for his off-island character.
Yeah.
Well, that does go to my hair. It does go to my Harry Potter thing, where he's why is he wearing glasses?
Yeah.
There's no spell to make his glasses.
Oh, right.
Anyway.
But it's interesting to see that Jacob did go off island and already had been involved with Alana and, preparing already a long time ago for 6 candidates and these people and that people. And it's just so it's just weird. He's already recruited Alana to recruit other people and protect them, and so this whole long thread of already setting up people to take over a position it's gone on for so long. It seems like that he's just traveling back and forth on island to off island, but yet he won't let Man in Black off the island. So I'm going to get dressed in my nice coat and I'm going to go travel over to the mainland. But
Right.
you have to stay here. You can't ever leave, but I'm going to go wherever I
It's
want.
a little bit of a double standard, but the way I read it is the Man in Black could have left the island had Jacob not transformed him and imbued the soul of the darkness into him, right? I mean, the Man in Black was just a normal man. He was just a guy who was kidnapped by Mother, right? So there was a time when he could have gotten off the island. And I think that the Man in Black has not quite come to terms with the fact that he is now somebody altogether different than who he used to be. I think Man in Black still still behaves as though he's just a man, but he's very much not.
He's not.
And so there are very good reasons why he can't leave the island. He still is behaving as though he's human with free will and there aren't rules, but he's bound by some very clear rules.
Yep.
But there's loopholes. Then they're both aware of loopholes. So there's loopholes.
What Jacob refused to say is that if you take the cork out of the island or whatever metaphor you're using, there's just wine everywhere.
Woo!
Everyone has wine. It's actually a good thing. We should want the Man in Black to get off the island because then it'd be wine o'clock for everyone.
That works for me.
Natasha, you were going to say something?
I was just saying that, I really feel like the purpose of the Man in Black after he got imbued with, whatever the evil black smoke was, I mean, he's not human anymore. You can't leave the island. Like, you literally cannot go. You are the embodiment of whatever bad things there are. You need to just relax. Like, I don't understand. Like, he's so dead set on leaving, and I understand that he never wanted to stay there like that to begin with, but it's like, if this is your role in life, at some point you have to just accept it. Because it's like, if he leaves the island and then causes like the damnation for like all the rest of humanity, I mean, will he feel good about himself then? He doesn't.
Like the black smoke didn't kill Richard. He didn't do any of that. As a matter of fact, I do want to talk about when Richard's on the ship after it's been shipwrecked and the black smoke situation, because that's quite a lot of important information I think we need to get to.
Before we get to that, though, I wanted to talk about, even though I've been doing this rewatch, I forgot that Jack didn't know that Locke was walking around the island. Because remember, he finds out, he goes, wait, what? He goes, well,
he's a bit stunned, yeah.
You mean he goes, what? He's dead. He goes, no, he's walking. It's not him, but he's walking around. And then when he talks to Hurley, because Hurley's talking to someone, and then Hurley says, "Yeah, Jack, it doesn't concern you."
Right.
That's a thread that's a string that they very rarely pull. I think find it pleasantly tugged on. The fact that Hurley talks to literal ghosts,
right,
like actual pests, and that's a stunner, kind of, for many ways, but they use it sparingly, because most of the time when people on the island are talking to dead people, they're talking to the black smoke.
Right.
They're talking to the Man in Black. Like, I think every time Echo talked to Yemi, that was the black smoke messing with him, right? I mean, that's the whole, and he gets angry and kills him then, it's like, makes sense. But Hurley, especially talking to Isabella, like her literal ghost, has been alongside Richard this entire time. Our loved ones, I will always be with you. I never left you. That's just stunning to think about, that it's her actual ghost and that she was just around and just out of sight for him. Now,
did Jacob know she was around?
I don't know if Jacob can see ghosts. That would be an interesting.
I mean, it was never we never heard anything about it, but I'm just wondering if he knew.
It's hard to say.
He seems to not really know until Ricardo says to him after he has the encounter with the Man in Black, that because he says, "I saw my dead wife here," type of thing, and he, so that's when Jacob's like, "Oh, that means he has her." So, but again, that's jumping ahead. But so he seems to not really reveal that he knows she's there until that conversation.
Talking about the self-imposed torture on Richard, though, he buries her lacrosse necklace for 150 years or whatever. He doesn't allow himself to carry it with him. He either doesn't feel worthy or doesn't think that what he's doing is holy or really the penitence that they talked about. Like, he doesn't carry it around. He buried it the whole way. And she asks him, through Hurley, why did you bury it?
Well,
that almost felt.
Maybe he feels I sold my soul to the devil to have immortality.
Yeah.
So I can't have my faith cross that right now.
I think a part of him is unsure whether he's working for the devil or the other side.
Because I don't ever feel that Jacob is this 100% wonderful entity. He's still someone who's playing a game. So, we hear throughout this episode that Jacob is a liar. We hear it from even castaways and other situations in this episode that actually say it outright. Jacob is a liar. So if he's a liar, how much of the conversation did he have with Richard entail how much truth in it?
Well, doesn't Alana say he's never lied to her? Sorry, Natasha.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, in terms of Jacob being a liar, he might be a liar, but I definitely had more faith in Hurley. So when Hurley said that, the man in black shouldn't leave and, we need to keep him here, I was fully on board. Like with that.
Are you talking about the end of the episode when Hurley says to Richard that Isabella said something else? She also said you have
that part went on. He said,
How come we never heard her say that?
Do you think he made it up?
Yeah, I think he made it up because
you think Hurley would make that up?
Well,
Hurley doesn't lie though.
Yeah, well,
he's not really a liar.
Hurley's very afraid of John Locke at this point. He's very unsure of what the John Locke is, so he's afraid. But I just found it curious, and obviously I could be overanalyzing, but when that conversation ends with Richard and Isabella, and they show she's not there anymore, okay, and then, Richard says thank you and blah, 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 and then Hurley goes, oh yeah, and she said one more thing. You have to wait. What? No, she didn't say that.
Was that before or after she had her palm against his chin?
That didn't happen. I didn't see that happen. But we do know that Hurley is quite concerned about the Locke that's involved in trying to get off the island. So again, remember, we still have our factions of castaways who are, I have to get off the island, but I'm not going to go with Locke. And then we got to get away from this group. So we have a lot of that. So I don't know. I didn't see Isabella say anything else to Hurley. So I don't know if that's
maybe it was Jacob.
I like that it's open to some suspicion.
Right. Or maybe just Hurley being afraid or concerned enough to say, I can step in here and, pull it off. I don't know.
But it would be for Hurley to do it. I think Natasha and I were on the same page. It'd be a shock if he would lie.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it makes sense, but but with Hurley, he just can't lie. Yeah. He didn't even want to lie about keeping the secret.
Right. He's an awful
protecting people on the island.
Yeah. I just found it very curious that, we see her literally end the conversation and she's gone. But if you watch him, he's like, oh yeah, she said one more thing. It was kind of, it struck me as curious.
It could represent some growth for Hurley. His ability to lie is improving. But I mean, nobody has a better, there's an urgency. There's a real urgency. And so to get Richard on the same page from where he was to rescue him back.
Again, this episode shows everybody is doing some sort of con and manipulating. Everybody is doing some sort of, what can I do to make sure something happens? So I don't kind of really see Hurley exempt from that, but I could be wrong.
I will say though, Hurley has, I think you said, Eric, he has grown, he's changed.
Yes.
He's become not a leader, but he's stepped up. He doesn't just sit back anymore.
He's not so afraid of that part of that part.
Yeah.
Like
but another thing about him was that he was definitely a lot more comfortable now talking with the ghost, because before he used to run. Whenever the ghost would come, But now he's like, you know what? I'm going to take up my role as messenger and I'm going to accept it. So, I mean, I still believe Hurley. I think that he spoke to the wife and relayed the message to Richard.
I mean, even his strength showed in this episode when he told Jack, point up. This has nothing to do with you. You know, so, you know, he said it matter-of-factly. It wasn't kind of wishy-washy like, hey, dude, don't worry about it. I'm not talking, you know, it was very matter-of-factly. This, you know, this doesn't concern you.
But so he was talking with Isabella well before he was transcribing for Ricardo in the moment. So it's possible she said the line about hell and all that other stuff. It's possible she gave Hurley some backstory and some ability to. He didn't just craft the lie in the moment of they're in hell then, because that was something. Yeah.
I can only help. Like I said, it just struck me as, oh, we just wound up a conversation and we got something else to jump.
I agree completely. That was my take on it as well.
It just got me curious.
Yeah.
So maybe, Eric, like you were saying, maybe that's before Jack came and interrupted him.
She could have been. Hello, I am so and so. I'm here because I need to contact Ricardo. You know him as Richard, and the Man in Black is across the island right now, trying. You know, so I think that's plausible. Because what else were they talking about then, if not? Because he was totally having a conversation with Isabella in Spanish.
Right.
Yeah, the conversation was about her telling him it's okay to let go now and let go of the things that you're holding on to. You don't have to punish yourself anymore. You know, I want, and that, so he got all that information from her at that point, saying, you know, let go of it, grow, you know, you don't have to hold on to it anymore, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so that it was really what she wanted him to do at that point. That was the conversation. It's just, you know, I didn't hear her say anything about the Man in Black.
Yeah, well, the way it was shot with the light, I got to tell you, it was a very Ghost moment, a very Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost moment. Like, I'm surprised that Ricardo and Hurley didn't dance slowly to the Righteous Brothers. You know, but shot to be Isabella, because it was very Ghost. It was very, very Ghost to me. The light on her face. Also, I just rewatched that movie, so it's probably on my mind. But yeah, literal Ghost. It's just the show. By this point, I think, and this point is season 6. Whatever they throw you, if you're into the show, you just take it. You're like, yeah, right. She's the literal Ghost right now. You know, it's like they did similar things enough before that you just believe it, and you're familiar that the concept of the Man in Black can do pretty much a lot of stuff. You're just like, yep, I'm here. I'm along for the ride. The story they're telling is so intricate. At this point, if you're not on board, it's going to lose you.
Yeah, which probably happened with a lot of people.
Yeah, I think every season, more and more people were jumping ship, but that's okay. Like, you know, it wasn't. I think the show as a whole stayed true to character the whole way through. So I really felt like it was the same show every season. But I remember hearing comments that were different, like, "Oh, it's not the same show I used to like," but it is.
Yeah, I think it got a little deeper every season, a little, you know, deeper in that regard. But they always stuck true to who the castaways were and who and all of everybody else that came along with the story. Like I said, you know, the casting throughout was so fantastic that we all ended up liking even supporting characters, except for Nikki and Paulo. Sorry.
My favorite two characters. Yeah.
But everybody else, like I said, even Isabella, she only gave us a few minutes of screen time, but yet we were like we really felt for her, you know, and the love that they had.
Well, Natasha, you mentioned the Black Rock and this episode, how it answered a lot of questions. We finally got the answer how the Black Rock ended up in the middle of the island. Mm-hmm. Now, I know a lot of people didn't like that answer.
A really big wave.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it just, you know, the really big waves that sometimes hit the island and half the stations of Dharma go out. They lose power because there's just big wind.
A tsunami. It just came, you know.
Just a random, yeah.
That was super random. And then, I mean, you know, because remember we had all those questions about the Tararet statue and everything. I'm like, whatever happened to that? We got that answer.
Yeah, I know, because I remember at this episode, a lot of people complaining. That's how it ended up getting in there. Oh my God! And that's how the statue got busted. But you got answered. I mean, I don't.
Different. Like, right? What else would you have wanted different? The answer was right there.
It's like they were, you know what? I realized that some people are just not going to be satisfied with whatever the answer was.
No, they just weren't. Again, it's okay. It's your opinion. You can do whatever you want with it. But I was like, I think you said, Eric, at this point, yeah, okay, I'm cool with that. It's not going to bother me. Now, when we see Isabella, when Richard sees Isabella, when he's still handcuffed and chained, is that Isabella or is that something? Because the man in black comes down and scans him. You know, he lets him sit there for a long time. You know, yeah. I put on this thing. The priest is a dick. Jacob's a dick. Man in black's a dick because they're all just being a dick to Richard. I mean,
doesn't the priest take his Bible? Literally, the one thing that's giving him confidence. He just like goes when he leaves. He takes it with him.
Yeah,
Richard can't even better himself and learn some English on his last day to live.
Yeah, you're going to hell. It doesn't matter. So it's like, wait, what? But
no, I mean, when he's in the ship, he's having a conversation with Isabella, and we hear it's. And I think I've talked about this before with you, Jack, that she's in front of him having a conversation, but yet we hear Smokey outside,
right,
in the distance. So, if we're to believe that Isabella did come to visit Richard at the end of the episode and give him permission to, let go of all the things that he's been holding on to and everything, then we should be able to believe that was her talking to him in the ship while Smokey's outside. Or does the Pale throw a real curveball? Is there more than one way to manifest something on the island? But if that was really Isabella at the end of the episode, I would hope to stand that maybe she came to see him when he was on the ship as well.
Why couldn't he see her?
When she was with Hurley? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. That's one of those things that kind of bothered me because we get these tidbits of the manifestations only happen on island via the smoke monster vehicle, so to speak. But now here we have two separate things. Are we to believe they're two separate smoke monsters? Is one Jacob and one Man in Black? Can Jacob transform? Is it two parts of Smokey? So you're right. Well, why he wasn't able to see her then, but he was able to see her on the ship. So
it's typical Lost, where they like I said, we see him Smokey comes down, does the photos, scans him, then leaves. He's just out. He's just out of the reach of the rainwater. He's out of reach of everything. He's poor guy. His wrists are all bruised and battered, and you said going back to characters, it's almost like when Kate had the handcuffs on.
Right. And you know what else is interesting in this episode? We how we learned that Jacob physically touched the castaway or the Oceanic Six or the whoever, when they were off island, touched them in the moment of their incident that changed their lives, right? Well, in this episode, Man in Black and Jacob both touch Richard on the shoulder.
Extended. They're very handsy. They're very like.
We specifically are shown that they both touch him. Magic.
Immortality is granted. Eternal youth.
Wow.
Oops. Sorry.
I take back everything I said about you, Jacob. I'm sorry. Don't drag me down to the ocean.
You're never going to believe it. It's UPS telling me I have a package outside.
Nice. At 10 o'clock at night.
Monday? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, so both of those, the light and the dark side both touch Richard. And I found that to be pretty important because we were shown that explicitly.
Well, and at some point, the Men in Black, even though he leaves his offer open, which I think is generous, and I like that he leaves. He says the offer stands, no hard feelings, man, and screws off. There's presumably a huge amount of time that passes before he sees him again. And in fact, because when Locke says to Richard, "It's great to see you out of those chains, Richard," and he's like, "You," after you really get that it's been 150 years since these two have spoken. And
Right.
so the smoke monster, I don't think any other Lost character can say that they've been that long without seeing the smoke monster. You know, the Man in Black has really given him a wide berth. For being Jacob's number one man, and for the Man in Black having it in for Jacob the way he does, he certainly has not interfered or tried to mess with Richard in the intervening years.
Mhm.
Or intervening years, whatever that phrase is. But yeah.
Does he think that? Well, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious about the thing we touched on a moment ago about was that Isabella? What are your guys' opinion? Was that Isabella on the ship? Or,
No, I think it was the smoke monster, but I heard the same sound effect that you did, the horn, like a distant horn.
He's outside. It's explicit. And then when she goes up the stairs to run, the smoke monster actually pulls her out.
But what? Yeah, so I wonder if he's in two places at once, or like the right arm of him is Isabella, and the left arm is. I think he literally grabbed himself out of to create the horror scene, because the only thing I have to compare it to is when Alex visits Ben in the temple. Yeah. When Ben hears, because that's some very quick change-a-roos that the Man in Black is doing. He filters in through the wall. You hear the horn. All of a sudden, nobody's there. Then Alex is already there. Then Then she goes away. She threatens Ben. She goes away, and all of a sudden, Locke is at the top of the tunnel going.
So then it wasn't Isabella there. That was all part of the illusion to.
I really feel like that was forgive my expression, smoke and mirrors of the black smoke monster. I really believe 100% it was 100% Smokey there. Okay. Because that's what he really, when he scanned Richard, he figured out. He figured out what's the most direct way to win someone over. Oh, he just tried to save and failed to save his wife. We're going to replay a scene of her imminent peril to get him to, and he immediately bought in to then everything that the Man in Black was saying about Jacob. Immediately bought in, and it's because he's been terrified.
He's the devil.
Yeah.
The devil has your wife.
Well, what's interesting is, as you say it that way, that he scans Richard, yes, and he's gathering this intel, and he's going to exploit that intel to gain Richard's confidence, so to speak, and learn more about him. And it's funny because we learn, I think it's probably season 3 or 2 or 3, I forgot, that I think it's Ben that says it, please, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but about Jacob gathering intel on people and exploits the information. So that's mentioned in the Ben and Jacob kind of conversation. So yes, here now we have it, that same idea, which I think it makes a lot of sense, Eric, that it's Man in Black, that you have that same thing. So again, does that fall into my idea of two halves of a whole, really? We're not really dealing with two individual things, but more like two halves of a whole.
I think Jacob and the Men in Black, it would probably be wrong to equate them and say they're the same, but neither of them are necessarily good or have the candidate's best interest in heart. That's for damn sure. But I like that, right? Like the Man in Black is very clearly a chaos agent. Jacob can excuse a lot of suffering if it's for what he believes is the right way, but he also doesn't interfere, and yet he crashes all these people's plane. And what about all the people that died and never survived the crash of 815 or Ajira or any of the people? I'm like, oops. So Jacob, in many ways, is not any better than the Man in Black. I would agree with that, but they are not the same.
See, I always perceive them as two halves of a whole. And I really delve into that in like Across the Sea. To me, it's like so obvious in Across the Sea that even though we're seeing two twins born, the mother only mentions one name, and things like that. So I've always felt like there was this two halves of a whole type of idea.
So question about the two halves of a whole, because how, I don't know if it's this episode or the episode after, but it's definitely been said that if something happens to Jacob, another person's just going to replace him, right? But do we ever hear of another human person replacing the Man in Black?
It's a great question, and I don't think the Man in Black has ever considered a replacement for himself the way that Jacob very actively for a very long time now has sought replacements. And I think that the problem is when Jacob put his brother into the island and caused him to become the smoke monster, he gave that evil that the cork is keeping in a body or a personality, whereas before it wasn't. So the reason there's no successor to Smokey is because Smokey was never supposed to have a body to begin with. It was only through Jacob's terrible act of mutilation that Smokey ever became kind of more empowered.
Jacob's murder, you mean?
What? Sorry?
Murder.
His murder.
Yeah.
Jacob's murder of his brother.
I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've seen Across the Sea. Yeah. It's flat out murder of his brother. It's just, yeah, the mother character pitted them against each other, or through showing favoritism, created a situation that was unwinnable because they're not coming together as brethren; they're coming together as enemies. And what the problem I have with them being, two halves of a whole, although I agree with you, is I want to see what half then is there for, like, I don't know, a Hurley type leader who cares about the people that he's bringing to the island. Like that's why I'm so thrilled to see who gets the island in the end. Cause I'm like, man, somebody better care about these people.
Right.
Like, can we just get a mentor figure who's not Machiavellian, a mentor figure who's not manipulative?
Well, I think the difference with Hurley, he's bringing people. I don't think he would bring people to the island necessarily because there's no game anymore.
Right. This is only because
you have no Smokey, you have no Jacob. Now the island can do what it was supposed to do, just be a special place for people. If you have cancer, if you have something, the
island can still heal you. You don't have to be part of the game, but you just but the game element is strictly born out of what we see in Across the Sea.
Yeah.
I did forget that I had a theory going for a long time until Across the Sea that Man in Black and Jacob were the same person. Until I got Across the Sea, I went, I guess that's down the drain.
Not necessarily, Jack. Again, two halves of a whole.
I think we were meant to believe that for a very long time. When we were told that we were going to Jacob's cabin, but who should we see in there except Christian Shepherd? You're like, what? We were very meant to believe that Jacob and the Man in Black were like the same
thing.
Yeah, they did that too many times, and it's almost like one of those, like a case of blasphemy from the Bible, where like one poses as the other, where like the Man in Black is posing as Jacob and manipulating whether it's Claire or somebody else. Like, I know he doesn't say he's Jacob, but he says, "Oh, but I can speak for him." There's so many instances of the Man in Black pretending to be the good guy, and he's just not.
But also, Jacob never calls him by name. He never says. He never says brother. We never brother across the sea.
Right. He's never identified as another identifiable person.
Right.
Never. I don't even think the only time I think he refers to him even as brother is in Across the Sea at one point. I think he may mention the word brother once. But there's never a name. The mother never gave him a name. The mother even the adoptive mother never gave him a name. We only ever hear the name Jacob. So there's a lot of layers to where I keep coming back to the two halves of a whole thing. And I felt that way too about the way Jack and John behave. Jack and John is actually the same name when you think about it, right? It's one name. And yet they always were the opposite of each other. There was a dichotomy between them. And if you put them together, you could have had two halves of a whole. So I use that analogy I've used it many times with Jack and John. But also I come back to that pretty much all the time with Man in Black and Jacob.
I like it.
Doesn't mean it's right. It just means that's where I lean.
I see where there definitely goes strong overtones of that. But it just still feels unfair. Am I?
No, somebody else's echo or something.
Yeah, I'm getting feedback.
Somebody else using computer headphones, or somebody else not using headphones.
I am not using headphones.
Oh, the mic might be. It's not happening now, but the mic was not. Now. The mic was picking up somebody's computers, like somebody's same computer sound.
Oh, okay.
You're fine now, though.
It's totally fine now. I don't know what happened.
I just
All
didn't hear what you said because I was getting. Go ahead and say it again.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, in terms of, because, you know, from the very beginning, like, they would always give us, like, the black versus white, like, the pieces of, oh, gosh, what was that game? The,
Backgammon.
yes, like, they would have the backgammon, the black and white, and, I mean, there would be so many juxtapositions to that of good and evil, but then when you finally meet Jacob, you know, we're initially introduced to Jacob as, like, this mythical character who, it seemed as though when he would encounter people off island, when he would give them the Jacob touch, it would be in a situation where he wants to do good. Like, okay, if you go to the island, then this person can be saved. If you do, you know what I mean? It seemed so positive. But then when you get down to it and then you see like all the names that have been crossed off in the lighthouse, you're like, oh my God, he's been doing this for a long time. And it's all manipulation. Like nothing was really like for the, just for like the good of it.
A positive end. It's just part of a game he's got
exactly. So it's like the black and white, the good and evil, like he's not really all that good. And the man in black is not necessarily all that evil. However, I do feel as though the man in black has to be on the island, not because of who he is, but what he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you can't leave. And Jacob, I think the island will always need a Jacob figure as well to be like the caretaker of the island. So between the both of them, like someone's gonna have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of it like black and white or like half of a coin, I don't know if they're necessarily like opposite ends of each other, but just two things that are gonna just be like stuck together for the rest of eternity.
Well, I think you need someone there because when we first see Man in Black and Jacob together, they're saying, "Oh, we think it's a black rock now, but at the time we thought it was a black rock because we see the ship. You brought them here, didn't you?" He goes, "It's going to always end the same. They get corrupt because they can't, because people are always they are who they are."
Man in Black is not impressed by Jacob bringing these people over. He's not impressed by it because it's the same redundant thing for him. It's like it's no big deal. Why do you keep bringing them here? It's the same thing all the time. So, but he's not impressed by it. He's not like, we need all these players on the game board. It has nothing to do with him. It's really just between the two sides, not everybody else.
Right.
I find the Man in Black to be a very wine bottle half empty kind of guy. And at the end of the episode, he smashes the wine. He wants out. All the liquid is going everywhere. It's wine o'clock. Everybody's out.
I do like when Richard comes.
A good thing. Let's make that clear.
Well, yeah.
I do like when Richard comes back. He goes, "Yeah, he told me to give you this, and it's a white rock."
White rock.
I said, "Oh, that was kind of a dig."
Yeah.
Well, it just takes me back to when Sawyer and the Man in Black go in the cave, and the Man in Black takes the stone off the scale, and throws it into the water. And Sawyer's like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Inside joke." And it's just like, I love that. I love that so much.
Anything else we want to discuss in the Black Rock? I think we've covered it pretty much. Well, not Black Rock. Aeterno.
I just found it to be just a very beautiful depiction of when someone is really sequestered themselves in this place because of their suffering. And you can punish yourself for so many years and let it get away from you, and you don't even realize it. And you need to be freed of that somehow. And you need to forgive yourself and say, okay, I don't need to hold on to this anymore. I can let it go. It's the only way to grow. It's the only way to say, I want to live. Because just because Richard may have lived for a couple hundred years, he wasn't really living. He needed to be free of the things that were causing his suffering so that he can truly live, free of all that stuff that was chaining him up and, all of those metaphoric words,
While I agree with that, I do find peace in knowing through the other episodes of Lost that led up to this, that Richard really did seem to find a groove. Whether he's recruiting Juliet.
he felt up until this point he had a purpose, because if you remember the episode right before this or so, that's when he decides, he finds out Jacob is a liar. My whole life has been a lie, and now I know my life had no purpose.
So this is really good at reeling him in from
right.
that.
So at this point now, Richard's life has been totally turned upside down, because although he gave servitude to Jacob because he felt he had purpose, now through learning about Jacob and the liar that he is and what the job really was, he felt that now my life had no purpose. This was all for nothing.
Yeah.
So that was a turning point for him. That's all growth. That's all part of the growth to get you to your next part of enlightenment and things like that. So, you're waking up to the things of saying, wait a minute, I'm not putting up with this BS no more. That guy's a liar. I have no purpose. Now what am I supposed to do? Well, you got to find a new path now. I got to find a new way, but I can't find this new way until I get rid of the stuff that's dragging me down, so to speak. So this is all part of that kind of growth.
Yep.
So we all agree, great episode.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, top 10?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Would anyone go top 5?
Yes.
I probably would go top 5. Well, it's
I would keep it top 10, but I have to think about it more if it makes it into my top 5.
yeah. I mean, I could say that, and then I go, well, there's this episode, this episode, this
I know.
episode.
I mean, there's always Walkabout is like the best episode, or when we find out about
the pilot.
well, the pilot and the Desmond episodes. Those are phenomenal.
The constant. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say top 10. I'll say top 10.
Right, but it's if we have to pick individual characters, not just episodes, individual episodes per character, so we can't have like more than one Desmond episode or one Locke episode.
Oh, I disagree with the premise entirely. My other 9 out of top 10 are all Desmond episodes.
How can I fit them all into one list?
Yeah.
No, it's a phenomenal episode. Brilliant, shot wonderfully, acted beautifully, directed fabulously. The story was just absolutely everything that we needed, and they gave us so much information and so many answers. And if you weren't paying attention, I'm sorry, but it was all right there in front of us. It was all packaged in a nice package with a little bow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of the package,
Indeed.
Oh.
that's the second episode on this list, and we spent almost an hour talking about Aeterno, but what did we think of this episode? I mean, it's almost not fair. Again, I don't know if you were with us, Eric, when I said I almost thought about doing Avatar by itself, just because I knew it'd be a long discussion, but I wanted to keep it the 2-episode thing.
Yeah.
But the package, which I think is a great episode, but it just unfortunately
It came after that one, so
Yeah. It's good. It raises really interesting. Again, with the Flash sideways, I really like seeing an alternate kind of. It's the story we know, but it's skewed. Sun and Jin are together at the bequest of her father. They go to this trip, but they're not married, and it's actually a problem that they're together. And
right.
all the personal hell that comes out of it. And I think it's just very rich character detail. It's very rich. I'm not a big fan of amnesia used in television, and aphasia is like pretty close to be up there. Is like, oh, Sun knows something that's really important, so she can't tell the characters. We're gonna make it so she can't tell the characters what Locke said.
But she only lost it in form of communication, not memory.
Which is good. So it wasn't amnesia, but it wasn't.
She could write it down.
Very Tower of Babel, like, we're gonna smite God, we're gonna build the tower. And it's like, no, we can't have that. We gotta, it was a very convenient sort of thing, but it was nothing. They didn't do that before. Jack should have come a lot quicker to the whole write me something.
Yeah.
As a doctor, especially if he had a patient in residency with that issue.
I had a lot of I do have a lot of notes for this episode because I'm crazy like that. But I felt this episode was quite important. I remember writing on my website that by the time we got to the sideways season 6, because everybody had different perceptions on what the sideways was, what did it mean, how is it running, is it something completely different? Well, this episode for me, I think it was at this point I was able to say, here's where I'm trying to explain myself on where it's running. So as we get into the episode, but I do want to say this. I know I'm going to quote my own stupidity. I know I must sound like a broken record about a few things over the years, but one of the events happening on island and off island are indeed blurred and running together. So this episode shows that very plainly. We actually get it in one of the Desmond episodes a few seasons prior, but this is, I've always tried to explain that we have on island and off island. They're in season 6, they're really running parallel with each other. They're not a different time frame, it's not ahead, it's not behind. They're running literally side by side with each other. And it shows in this episode. Let me see if this would have in this episode. Yeah, and another continuing clue line that shows itself about the timelines running is we get a lot of nods about their altered state of consciousness. That somebody's in this episode always in a state of sleep, being knocked out, wired, and we still have the game the hint in here, and things happening in the head. So states of consciousness, but this episode definitely shows us about the two timelines, or the two perceived timelines are really running side by side until what happens is at the end they're going to have to cross. They have to merge.
Well, and it's really setting up when you say that too, and I love any episode named after Desmond, which is obviously the reveal at the end. I'm a big Desmond fan, as I said before, but no, when they in a couple of episodes when they strap Desmond up to the big electro whatever, and he's literally crossing into that universe and back, crossing into the Flash sideways. The timelines are happening simultaneously.
Side by side.
He's hopping from one to the other.
It's side by side.
Nuts.
Actually, I took a lot of heat. We'll touch upon it, but in this is the episode where I kind of made a really big deal about Kimi when he's tying up Jin in the cooler, and he says a particular line, and for me it solidified what he said, and everybody's like, "No, you misheard," or "No, they said that's not what he said. The producers didn't say he said that." Okay, but yet with my own ears, when I heard it, Kimi actually says a line, and we'll get to that. That leads me to believe, okay, well, we just solidified it. It's happening side by side.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, so it happens in this episode. So, but it's a good episode because we have Jack and John now really starting to. Now they have to kind of make their way towards each other. Now Jack knows John's here. I gotta.
Right.
What the hell is this all about?
Yeah, it feels like the beginning of the war, like the real war.
Yeah, exactly. And that
how convenient that characters in this episode are like, you heard about a war? Yeah, it just started.
Start right now.
I just like seeing Widmore in a more active role, delegating, but like front and center. He's going to meet Locke. He's going to, talk to Jin into giving him what he wants. And for a character that was so off in the distance and originally only appeared in other characters' flashbacks to now be, and he was the big boogeyman of season 4, like Charles Widmore wrote to the ocean. Right. I'm thrilled to just see him on the island now. He's really like living in the full glory of taking action to take back the island. And, I don't know. I like seeing Alan Dale literally be active on the show and have the most to do.
He's a fantastic actor.
I just saw him on The West Wing last night.
Yeah.
West Wing. I said, oh, okay.
Yeah. With Charles Whitmore, that's all he's ever going to be is Charles Whitmore. But I do want to bring out this point in this episode because we just went through a whole thing about Aeterno, talking about the identity of the smoke monster, and now we know John is, smoke monster related and have you. Okay. In this episode, it is explicitly said some important things that tell me something a little different. Locke admits to Sawyer in this episode not being able to turn himself into smoke and fly his ass to the other island. Okay, and then Locke is also referred to in this episode as that man by Richard, not that thing, not that monster, not that anything else other than a man. So in this episode, I have no reference to him really actually being the smoke monster. He's referred to as a man, and he admits, I can't turn myself into smoke and fly my ass over to the other island.
Yeah.
Well, I thought he said if he could, wouldn't I leave the island?
No, he said, well, he's saying he can't.
Yeah, because he can't.
Sawyer
leave the island.
says, can't you? Yeah, Sawyer says, can't you just turn yourself into smoke and fly yourself over to the other island? He says, if you think that I could, don't you think I would? Well, that means you can't.
Right.
There's got to be some reason why he didn't just hop on a boat that was leaving. Like, you would think he would let other people who crashed on the island leave the island and just go with them, befriend them, and then go with, like, oh, we're here just for the weekend. Okay, great. Let me hop on board. We aren't clear on what it is, but there are some very real barriers to him leaving the island. The only way he can do it is with the protection. I assume it's with the protection. He says, I have to round up the rest of the candidates and get them back on the plane and leave. The same protection that being a candidate gives them to arrive on the island without dying in the first place and go back in time and all that crap is the same protection that the Man in Black is going to use to get off the island. It's like Jacob's magic or whatever is enough to help the Man in Black be ferried off the island, but anything short of that just won't work for some reason.
Or is it all just part of the game?
I don't know. I love the pylons. I don't think the Man in Black was expecting pylons on the Hydra Island.
Where do you get those pylons? Do you go to Walmart? Do you order them on
Amazon?
Amazon.
You got them on
at a science station in, where was it? Or, his daughter has a science station. He has unlimited funds. The thing is, like, he is, when his associate, Daniel Faraday's mother, is running the lamppost station in its present day incarnation, I'm like, this guy's got all the Dharma files. He knows exactly what the pylons are made out of. He is the will, the way. One thing I'd like to
that off Amazon. I don't care.
I'd like to call out when I forget the woman's name, but the woman who gets Jin in the dark room. And Zoe, she says to Widmore, oh, maybe you should have sent, somebody who knows how to do this stuff and not a geophysicist.
Right.
Or whatever. And I was like, this is a great line. But also the first thing he did was send mercenaries to the island. They would have been competent to head off John Locke, but we see them fail then. And so now he's brought a team of scientists, and it's a nice reflection on his initial sort of task versus what it's evolved to. He's brought people who aren't just going to shoot and ask questions later. Although in this same episode, we get a throwback to all the mercenaries he sent with Kimi. And it's so interesting.
Yeah, it was nice to see Kimi again.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
Martin Kimi.
He's got what Stephen King would describe as a shit-eating grin. It's a famous term that he uses, but it's really just like, hey, how's it going? And the shocking thing to me, especially knowing this Flash Sideways, is a purgatory that the heroes have chosen for themselves, where they can meet, like a meeting room, like a lobby, before they pass on. What are their arch enemies doing in this Flash Sideways? This is not like Kimi is in the same afterlife waiting area, causing pain and suffering, as is Mikhail, as is who's the third guy? His friend, the other mercenary.
Omar. Was it Omar?
Omar. What are Omar and Kimi, these agents who surely would have gone to hell if there were such one? What are they doing in this happy purgatory for everyone to?
You got to make it. You got to make it interesting.
That's running simultaneously. It's the island experience that is branched off to two. We now have two levels, and they're just running simultaneously together.
Yeah, but I like it from a character perspective, obviously, and I wonder if I think it's true that we see characters gradually gain more consciousness and awareness of their lives on the island in the Sideways. But yeah, I mean, just Kimi knowing that what Saeed did to him in real, or any of it is just really endlessly interesting. I think from a character point to see these actors back, and it is kind of like a victory lap, a who's who of who's been on there before.
Right. I didn't even think about that before, but yeah.
I mean, McDowell really shines in this episode.
Well, I do like that he gets shot in the eye.
Let's give it a shine. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Jack finally bringing the notepad and pen to Sun because she can communicate. But we do get a nod to that. This kind of flashes me back to John Locke when John Locke goes into his sweat lodge, and then with that whole time when he loses his voice, he notes to Charlie on paper and pen. So we just get a little kind of nod back to certain things.
What did we? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, what did we think? Because Widmore brings Jin Sun's camera and has pictures of Jiang on it, his daughter, who he's never seen before. Now, this brings me to one of the scene, the scene that upsets me the most in the whole history of Lost is when Jin decides to die with Sun and leave his daughter behind. I could see if he had never seen her, but once he sees her and you see his look, that it's like, it's like, oh, that's my child. I want to hold my child. I want to be with my child. I've never got to talk to my child. I've never, all this different stuff. And he decides, well, no, I want to be with Sun. I want to die with Sun. So it just, that scene, I know I took a lot of heat at the time because I was one of the few that said, no, he should have left Sun and gone home and been with his daughter. I mean, it just, as hard as that would be, it's what that whole thing. If your daughter's over there drowning and Son's over there drowning, who do you save? Well, I'm saving my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because who's raising his daughter?
One of the corrupt Pecks, one of her parents.
Yes.
Right. One of the mobsters of her family.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a touching scene, and it's like, oh my God. And then I think knowing what we know now, that neither one of them makes it back, makes it even harder to watch that scene.
It's a moment of humanity. Charles Widmore shows real humanity there and really is able to successfully, I think, in very few words, tie in the struggle. I have a daughter too. And it's really all about Penny that he's doing this for, although he does not give a shit about Desmond. No. And that has never been, I mean, it's been clear since day one, like one swallow is worth more than you could ever, like, come on. Yeah. But the fact that he has him drugged and tied up and is dragging him around, literally referring to him as an it for most of the episode, the package. He's doing all this to save Penny, to create a world where Penny can thrive and exist, but that does not extend to her child, his granddaughter's father at all, or grandson's father at all.
If you would just accept Desmond, Penny would be around.
Right.
But Desmond's the key to all this other stuff, so he's okay. He's expendable. Desmond's special. But yeah, he's doing it all for Penny. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there, I think, in it a little bit. Like, he wants to save everybody, but he is absolutely willing to sacrifice this guy for it.
But he was like that because remember, he ordered Ethan and Ben to kill Rousseau and the baby.
Yeah. I do think that he genuinely had some character growth between losing the island and coming back to the island. He's still a prick. He's absolutely a prick to Desmond, but, and therefore he's evil in my mind. There's no one worse. But yeah, I think that losing the island really taught him something, that he wasn't as invulnerable that he thought he was. And he kind of took it for the island for granted. He was always going off and having a daughter outside of the island and all this other stuff. But I like to think that the Widmore that was a giant prick in the army outfit is a little bit different now. And I like to think he actually, I mean, somebody has to do the actual good thing. Like, it's because of Widmore that the Man in Black fails, and it's delayed so many times before the final, showdown.
Right.
So he's
a hell of a guy. I don't know. But anyway, that will always bother me.
Well,
yeah.
again, the struggles that I think that they're having to face and the choices that they're having to make is really about what's happening, particularly and especially with the island adventure, to all lead to their rebirth. So I know in a human form and in our human lives, our hearts are like, what choices are you making? They're stupid. But in the context of the story, it's these choices that they're making because they have to reach their rebirth, so to speak. So who knows why they're making these choices?
Another question I had: why did it take Jin so long to turn that switch back off in room 23?
And he knew all about room 23 because he worked for the Dharma Initiative, so he knows.
Yeah.
Okay, you work there. You know what that room is all about.
He's like,
Well, wait a minute. I wouldn't assume that one hand talks to the other. Would look at the Pearl. If you work at the Pearl, you're not telling people at the Swan that they're being surveilled.
Well, it's funny because but Zoe comes in with these maps that have Jin's signature on.
Yeah.
So, he's pretty privy to a lot of the areas around. So, I don't know. That's
was it there when he was?
No, I think because what is it? The He's Are You, the Ingvin or something. He's the room 23 of Jin's time. I think room 23 happened maybe the next 5 years. In the 80s, maybe.
But still, you're right there by the switch, and it's driving you crazy. I would just flip the switch back on.
Oh, it's such a mesmerizing PowerPoint slide, though. You ever see a PowerPoint slide that really just engages you, really just captures your attention? They missed an opportunity because one of those slides says God loves you as he loved Jacob. Really could have thrown a Jacob reference in there, but I'm not sure that one shows up. I think it's all the other ones.
No, the one that shows up in this one is we are the causes of our own suffering.
Which, hey, that's relevant. Right?
Is exactly what Richard just we're labeled. We just had that whole lesson in the previous episode.
But I was thinking to myself, and it was amazing. I was glad we got more into that room. I loved seeing the way the speakers were mounted at angles, that it was clearly like there's some real cool design to that room. And at first I was wondering, well, why didn't Carl just get up and if the breaker's right there? But it's because he was also strapped in. I forgot the whole strapped in part. Yeah. And I thought they did a real kindness to Jin, just putting him in that room and then not strapping him in and letting him kind of just, because they just needed him, in the room.
Hold him over there for a while.
Yeah. They didn't need to psychologically torture him at all, which I felt refreshing because most of the time you get a 2-for-1 special on being captured and tortured mentally.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't need to shoot everyone with the darts because he was going to leave.
Right.
That's the interesting part. They really screwed up.
Well, he wants to go find Sun. That's his goal right now, is to just get to Sun.
And why does Sun run from Man in Black?
She doesn't trust him. She tells Jack, because I don't trust him.
I get that, but he
because she was always anti-Locke.
Right.
I feel. So Sun was always like Team Jack, and when Man in Black came in the form of Locke, he just seemed even more untrustworthy.
But he did say, he goes, look, I give you you have a choice with me. I think it shows the difference between him and Jacob. He goes, no, you have a choice. Right. Free will. You can get, because even though somehow she gets knocked out, we don't know how she gets knocked out, right?
She runs into a
tree. Man in Black doesn't take her.
No, he very, very much could have.
He just could have said, okay, you ran here, I'm gonna take you, and here's Jin, but then when you got there'd be no Jin. But
and just like Man in Black didn't take Richard either. He didn't kill Richard. He didn't do anything to Richard.
But can Men in Black pick somebody up without being Smokey? Because I have never seen him actually physically do anything without being the smoke monster.
He slapped Claire.
He did?
Yeah, when Claire was going after.
And he threw her on the ground.
Yeah, when Claire attacks Kate.
Yes.
And poor Saeed sitting there going, because he's just watching Claire with a knife.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Saeed because
I was about to say, can we talk about Saeed for a second? Yes.
Saeed mentions very specifically that he doesn't feel anything, right? Because we're starting to see the past couple episodes, Saeed's now becoming more, I'll use the word zombie-like, but more lack of emotion, right?
Downer Saeed.
Did
Okay.
something? Can somebody remind me? Did something happen to him? Was this when he drowned and came back to life? That was way earlier, right?
That was
Right, yeah.
very early, right.
Yeah.
So, but
So he's only now feeling numb.
No,
Well,
I think he's been
No,
doing it the
he's-
whole time, but I think someone like you know that like in the cartoon where it's like until they tell you, you don't realize that you can fall.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think it's been happening the whole time, but like once they, I think was it the man in black who told him that you don't have any emotions anymore?
no, it's Saeed actually tells Locke, he says, I feel nothing. I feel emptiness. I don't feel pain. I don't feel hate. I don't feel all of those emotions. He doesn't feel anymore, which is very important. So those other, I don't feel anger. I don't feel, those negative emotions. I don't feel them anymore.
You really see it when Kate gets attacked. He
just sits
there. Saeed, and he just goes.
He's just sitting there. He feels nothing. He's staying out of it, and he's keeping his emotional distance.
Which isn't Saeed, because Saeed would have.
Right. It isn't. But what it is it's a stage of enlightenment. When you get to the stage of enlightenment where you are free of those things, those emotions, then you're closer to your enlightenment. So
And you can swim very far without getting tired.
This is the final step. This is the final step before nirvana.
I remember feeling when it was airing, pretty much since season 5, that they could have given Naveen something better to do. That they could have given him more to do. Saeed feels very one note, for the last couple seasons. But I think they tried to give him something, and I think by the end I'm okay with it. But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting. It just I have trouble engaging with a character who's disengaging.
Well, I take it as all of the castaways are in a different stage of their awakening, and this is Saeed's stage. He happens to be at the stage of that emptiness stage, and it could be very off-putting to us because that's not anything of his personality. I just think they're trying to depict to us different, showing us where they each are in their different stages of awakening. And this just happens to be his. He's at the stage right before nirvana that's empty.
Yeah. I really like where
I can explain it, but because that's the goal here is where we're going to. We're going to an awakening. We're going to enlightenment. So these are all right there in front of us. They're all just in different spaces of it.
Question about Saeed though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Eric. Go ahead.
No, please say.
Yeah, no, with Saeed though, because remember how he was like off island, he became a hitman for Ben,
Right.
and before that, he was also a torturer. So it's like he always had this innate ability to inflict a lot of pain on people and not necessarily feel like bad about it. So for him to have this like almost like zombie-like thing, I see where you're coming from with the, with like the transcendence of like towards nirvana and stuff like that. But it just feels like another layer of the personality that he always had, but it's like just magnified because like to be able to take a life, snap a neck, like pull out fingernails and be like, hey, anyone want what? You know what I mean? It's like,
you're right about the Saeed that we know, the torturer, the person who is able to do that. But since we first met Saeed in season 1, even though we know he is that person, he has been trying to rid himself of being that person since season 1.
This is true, but that's
who he's been trying to get rid of that.
He does feel guilty after he tortures Sawyer.
Right.
Yes.
So there's that he's trying to rid himself of that part.
But he didn't feel guilty about torturing Ben.
No, because he didn't like him.
Ben had it coming.
It's a struggle to come face to face with that part of you that shouldn't be part of you anymore. And it's a struggle, and you're constantly confronted with those lessons of that person you don't want to be. It's always right in front of you. So, but yeah, he is the torturer. He is that communications officer. But he's been trying to rid himself of that.
Did Shannon die before he tortured Ben?
I think so. No. Ben was in the Swan, right? When they tortured him. No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but Shannon
Well,
died.
Shannon's still alive.
Shannon dies at the other 48 days, right?
Yeah.
Right.
After
So
that,
which,
yeah.
which came first? I'm trying to remember.
I thought Ben was end of season 2, so after the other 48 days.
Well, isn't Ben in the hatch when? Because there's a
I'm
minute.
not. I'm not saying that Ben killed her. It was,
Yeah.
but Syed believes that he's involved, that he's with the others.
Right. He thinks he's another. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
his anger.
I may be off on the exact which episodes came first.
I can't remember off the top of my head because it's kind of blurring together.
In terms of stages of Nirvana, I like where Jack is at. And Jack references the lighthouse, which I think was a very formative, like it very much affected him seeing his mom's house like that. In the glass mirrors, seeing your child, seeing the home you spend so much time in will do that to you. I can speak from experience, but no, Jack is just very agreeable. I like the sort of more chilled out Jack in general. Ever since getting back to the island, I can't help but just kind of get along with him a little bit more, and I think he is a lot more open-minded and a lot more willing to believe that there's a destiny in store with him. Like the kind of pushes that he's needed in the past to get him to see eye to eye with what the island has in store for him and what his destiny is, and to really be at peace with other people's decisions and be a good leader, all the good skills. He's finally at that place where he's ready to listen and believe. And there was a period of time where he gave up, a little bit and let the waves carry him. But I think right now he's, kind of remembering himself and is just a lot more chill, but is still, I think he's coming back into his character while being significantly altered. And he's on his path to, whether it's Nirvana or whatever.
What do you think of Jack's promise to Sun that I'll get both you and Jin off this island? I promise.
I don't know what gives him that confidence. That's he's up against the odds. He doesn't get it. It's hard to say, but I think that he wants to reward Sun's unwavering loyalty to him over the last. I think that he really will keep that. He's not making an empty promise in the sense that it's something he intends to betray. Right. But yeah, he
believes he can do it, but
yeah,
unfortunately, it doesn't happen.
Well, at this point too, Sun feels, even though she's lost her voice, her goal is to get Jin and bring him home.
Right.
So we're getting a distinct reference to the word home. And then when we, let's go back in the start of season 6 when we meet this new improved John Locke, who is now Man in Black, Smokey, or what have you. He tells Ben after he kills Jacob, I want to go home. So the goal here is to go home. But Sun, even though she can't speak, made it clear in subtitles that she's not here to save the world. I just want my husband, Jin, I want to take him home. So that's the goal.
Which is fair. I mean, it's
Yep.
it's the only reason she came back to the island.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk more about the Flash Sideways in this episode, and how crazy is it that the $25,000 that Jin is escorting across the ocean is his own fee for the hitman to kill him?
Right.
How nuts is that?
So disgusting.
Here, take this money to this restaurant. Don't ask why. That's fine. Yes, boss. Oh my God.
Yeah, he says, I just do what your father tells me to do.
Yeah.
Well, and they could have wire transferred that. This is 2004, not 1920.
It makes it more dramatic, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way Kimi says that money you brought here was my fee for popping you, but the way he says it, I'm like, oh, he's so creepy.
And Jin says, thank you. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And that's who's raising Ji Young.
Yeah, those type of people. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Only the best.
She's in safe hands. As long as she doesn't break any glass ballerinas, she'll be fine.
I did note down that in this episode we see Locke and Jack have both promised things to their followers. They both have literally held out their hand. In this episode, Locke holds out his right hand, Jack holds out his left hand. I'm being specific. In a gesture of hope. It's when these types of parallels are shown that the metaphor of the story kicks in for me, making me want to feel that we are still seeing two halves of a whole, or the opposition. Again, I keep coming back to that. I know it's probably just me going off the rails again, but it seems to present itself so often. And then I go on to say, look at Hurley's comic book in the beginning of the series. We know that the comic tells the story of Alien X that was hidden away when it gets cancer. That's the comic book Hurley has in the beginning, right? The dome is covering the city with the polar bear and all that on the cover. The cover also shows us part of the story where the Flash and the Green Lantern are combined with their new halves, creating a new being, two halves of a whole. So we get the nod to these two halves of a whole right from the very beginning.
See, Lost did it much better than Voyager with Tuvix. So as a Star Trek reference, deep cut. I love the comic book. I love the idea. Again, the show early on had to decide what its themes were, and they showed us. And in props, in everything, like the level of detail and the arts, everything, the mural in the Swan, all of that from whatever first day was that they were introduced, told the story that we are now getting of white and dark and men and everything. And so I don't think
it's about balance. It's
and I don't think it's that outlandish to say like that. Yeah, I do believe that's what Hurley's comic book was intimating, and yeah.
Right. So that's where I get that idea from.
Yeah.
I was going to say something. Now I can't remember what it was. So it must not have been very important.
Oh.
Anything else we got?
I
mean, again, the package was a really good episode. It
was.
Yeah.
But we also learned Sun is pregnant in this episode.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Oh, in the Flash.
She gets shot, but we also learn that she's pregnant. So we have a package. We have Desmond as the package. We know that Jin has a package of the watch and there's 25 grand. And now we learn that Sun is pregnant. So the package the package idea will transcend both Flashes as they run side by side until we get to the convergence.
Is it wrong that I forgot the package was Desmond?
I totally forgot.
I was like, oh, that's right. It was Desmond. I go,
it could be anything
as well.
Yeah, it could be anything. There's no reason to call him the package except it sounds cool.
Yeah, that was very misleading. I thought I was gonna see. I remember when it first came out. I thought it was gonna be like something cool. It was just Desmond.
Just old Desmond, man.
Oh man.
But it's a military term, right? It's a military term, and Locke used to like to play his military games, and so maybe Widmore was wanted to play
Colonel Locke.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe Widmore wanted to be General Widmore for the day or whatever.
Yeah.
But, it was a great episode. I think too, as like the train is really getting going as we're really inching towards the end here, and things are really just becoming quite right in front of us. I don't think there's really any surprise. And like you said previously about the episode before, if people watched it, I'm sorry if things got past you and you're like, this is not what it, blah blah blah. I'm sorry, but for many of us, the answers were right there, and what we're seeing is it's self-explanatory at that point. We're pretty much in tune with what's being presented to us.
Concur.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else?
So great.
Well, I know what I wanted to say. I now remember what I was going to say. Man in Black, when he was talking to Sun, when Sun said, "You killed all the people at the temple," he goes, "Well, they had lost their way."
Right.
That wasn't a good excuse to kill anybody.
No.
So that's why I say that neither one, Jacob or Man in Black, are really good guys.
Right. But again, see why? How? So both of them, if it's if the both of them kind of still have similar ideals like that of people dying and it's no big deal, then we're not really seeing we're not seeing an opposition. They have the same ideas of certain things, and I don't know. It's just, although it could just be coming to us in bits and pieces, but still, when things like that happen, it's like, well, that's no different than Jacob saying, well, they all died, when I brought them here, or it's no big deal,
According to that, it just reminds me of the hieroglyphs on the wall in the temple. Like the Men in Black was presumably worshipped by these ancient peoples as a god, as a deity, and put up on probably the same pedestal as Jacob is now, or whatever. Like I think the Man in Black had his time for his ego to be stroked in the past, and now because they did not show him deference at the temple and he wiped them all out, he's like, that was fine.
Well, it's interesting about this when you mention the hieroglyphs on the wall with the black smoke, and I'm trying to remember what the picture looked like. And then when you go back to the episode of Richard going to see very, very young John Locke, and John Locke drew drawings on the wall in the house of his foster home, he drew a picture of himself, I think himself sleeping, and the black smoke coming up from a fire or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, the black smoke kind of connecting to things that involve, sleeping, altered state of consciousnesses, and things like that. But John Locke, I remember a hand-drawn picture for some reason in John Locke's.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, it's black crayon, and it's
right. Drew something, right? Yeah.
The hieroglyph one looks more like Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park, but it's like a spiral with like two googly eyes or something. Right. The same eyes, no hands, but it's the thing.
I always thought that he killed the people in the temple because they still supported Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, he gave them an ultimatum, and they didn't deliver.
Right.
Sun running the other way is the number one unexpected moment, I think, of the episode that deserves it. She just bolts. That was really cool. I did not. You expect them to have a conversation. Like a conversation is civil, but she just bolts.
So you bring up the point of at the temple and Locke telling these people they had a choice to leave and everything. So obviously, he didn't want those followers to go with Jacob.
Right.
Right? Is that
he knew Jacob was dead.
He knew Jacob was dead already. So, I mean, what would have been the harm in just letting them all just live there? They had nothing else to worry about.
They could influence people. He needs all the candidates to get off the island.
Yeah. That's still the goal, to have that certain group of people to make way in.
So he doesn't want people getting in, like I said, if they can influence one of the, no, we're not going, then.
Right.
Yeah, because he's in his end game, he needs to really streamline those are against him versus those are for him. Before it was more like the more people on the island, the more people he can maybe manipulate, and it's kind of a winning scenario for him. But now it's like, if you're not with me, you're against me. I'm just gonna, rub you off.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Now we solved it.
We solved Lost.
Did you guys like this episode? Now that you do you feel? I mean, because I don't want to impart, my thought process on you. I just bring stuff to the table. But do you feel that this is moving at a quicker pace as we're nearing the end to pretty much lay out where all of our castaways are at this point in time? And what is your perceptions of the sideways? Do you think it's a different timeline? Do you think it's a flash forward? Do you think it's a flip? I mean, what are your thoughts on what the actual sideways are and what they're presenting for us?
I just see it as a profound way of exploring characters in new and interesting ways. The same old characters that we know their backstory. We know whenever we get handed something that's just slightly off or slightly different, I then double up on I pay more attention. And so I really like it. I think I probably treat it as just a what if scenario. Like, we're just going to rewrite the book. We're going to put the same characters in a slightly different situation. I probably thought, based on the opening shot with the island at the bottom of the ocean, that it was like, here's what would just happen if the island did. Like, we're able to discern through process of elimination what happened in these people's lives that was caused by the island being present. So I wasn't looking at it as a purgatory at all until Desmond started hopping over, and I was like, wait a minute, is he just dying? but yeah, I just kind of saw it as a really great opportunity for the writers to explore character in a different way, and I didn't put too much thought into when it was occurring or if it was occurring, but now that's obviously changed.
Yeah, looking back when you watch it, hindsight, sometimes things hit you a little differently,
It seems more smooth, honestly. This, like, watching it again, it seems like it was a lot more smooth than it felt watching it.
I think we were watching it the first time, like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. Well, yeah. But yeah, it's nice to just breathe out and be like, okay, this season's about to end. The show's coming to an end.
I'm digging it. It's happening.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to come to an end because I'll just start all over again. That's all.
We need to.
That's the best part. You could
Which is what I usually do anyway.
Imagine this was like 40 years ago, and that you had this show. You couldn't just watch it whenever you want.
Yeah.
There'd be no way of watching it. You'd have to wait for the reruns or the syndication.
And this show does not have reruns. You have to find it on streaming or own the Blu-rays and stuff. So
yeah,
it's not on network TV and a rerun anywhere. So
I just got the Blu-rays. I had the DVDs, but I just upgraded to the Blu-rays because I'm prepping for a big rewatch. So
good.
I want to see if I can solve the Hurley bird. I want to figure it out. I feel like if I pay close enough attention, maybe my eyes start bleeding, then I'll finally understand where that comes from.
I'm always rewatching, Eric. It's literally on a loop in my house. I'm always rewatching.
Hurley bird. The mystery is right there, I swear.
Yeah.
It's the only time we see a bird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Except for when Charlie's getting beat up, that episode where he gets beat up, he sees the doves or seagulls or something flying, pigeons.
I think it's all the magnetism in the air that kills the birds, because don't they rely on that for navigation and their internal? Did they find metal in bird skulls or something? It said that reflects.
They have a magnet in their beak. There's a little bit of magnetism in their beak.
So with all the swan stuff, yeah. So that's why that's canonically why there are no birds in there.
Right, they're just flying all over the place. They can't get to the island.
They can't penetrate they can't get through the field.
Don't they catch a bird or something? They want to put a note on it. Claire wants to put a note on a bird.
Yes.
Yeah, par avion.
Par avion, yeah.
There you go.
So there are
there are birds. All right, I take it back. All right, that's all I got.
Well, thanks, Hank, as always, for having inviting me back, and
it's fun.
Always a pleasure.
Fun chat, and
I love joining you guys. Thank you so much. You always make it so much fun, all of you.
All right, we'll be back next week, I think. I haven't decided yet.
What's the next episode? I forgot.
I don't know. I can't remember.
It is. I'm looking at it right now. It's Happily Ever After, and Everybody Loves Hugo.
Oh, okay.
Nice, lovely episode.
Yeah, I think I'll be back next week, but I'm kind of stalling a little bit to get it out of 2020 into 2021 and done.
And then Christmas will be here and New Year's, and those 2 weeks will be crazy. And
yeah, so I probably won't be recording then. But anyway, we're so close to the end. But thanks for everyone who joined us, and you guys were great today. Great chat as always.
Thank you.
Yes.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Hey.
I'll just say goodbye.
See ya. Y'all.